Are you one of the 29 million people who take
Mhm.
some type of pain medication every day? Then you are watching and listening to the right place because we're going to talk today about the potential advancing complications of these things. This is welcome to Truth
Yes.
or Trend, everybody. This is where Dr. V and myself, Dustin Strong, a nutritionist, discuss all of the things that you can be doing about your health to be living the best life pain free, and we
Mhm.
want to make sure we're giving you all the solutions that we've not only researched and learned from many, many other great people, but we've also seen firsthand in our clinics be what you can do to very, very quickly resolve pain in your body without having to take something that gives you you had a better term for it, but potential advancing complications, meaning
Right.
if you're not taking care of that problem, it's going to show up as a bigger problem down the road. And so these are
Right.
signals from your body. In fact, we're very lucky to be joined this morning by the author of the book, The Headache Advantage, Dr. Vrzal, who tells us, look, if you got a pain in your head, that is your body communicating something to you that something isn't quite right. And so this is the second in the series we're doing on his headache specifically. We're going to try to cover a couple of the different ones. We're going to talk about what's called the Cyclops headache. We're going to talk about
Right here.
left-sided, yeah, and left-sided headaches, some of the most common ones. And just reaching for that aspirin is really not what we are encouraging anybody to do. We're encouraging you to learn from it because, as I said, we got 29 million Americans. Did you know that, Dr. B? Every day taking
Yeah.
some type of over-the-counter pain medication. And
Mm.
that contributes to 100,000 hospitalizations. Who can afford to go to the hospital? Please do not.
Yeah.
17,000 deaths every year just from people who are taking over the counter pain meds. And we're here to
Right.
stop that. We're here to let
Right.
you live, let live.
Right.
So,
Right. Not
um,
don't just live, let's thrive.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, when I say live, I mean live,
Live to your fullest potential.
yeah, like let's get out there and
Yes.
have some
100%.
fun, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
Okay, so if you are one of those persons, or if you know somebody who's doing that, please listen, because we're going to give you some really important information about what that's telling you and why that isn't the best solution moving forward. So we've already covered right-sided headaches, which are the most common ones. So if you haven't heard that one, look it up. Some great information in there. But today, I really want to push on Dr. Vita. What's the next most common one? Because we want to get these solutions in your hands as quickly as possible. Now, you
Right.
can go to the website, right? We've got the Headache Advantage. I'm going to just share this with everybody who's watching instead of just listening. And it shows he's got several types of headaches: the left-sided, right-sided, back tension, frontal, cyclops, both sides, and pain that surrounds the head. So we've already looked at the right-sided. Today we're going to look at left-sided and the cyclops headache. And we're going to talk a lot about those, but you can, of course, get the book, and that will give you the advantage over your headache, having that knowledge.
Yeah, and so those links when you if you don't have a Dustin or somebody like myself to get you help you figure it out, those links you click on the left side and it'll give you indications of what supplements to consider, what foods to consider, that sort of stuff. So try to create that website as a resource for you. And Dustin, you were talking about pain meds and people trying to mask pain. The other side of that is headaches. I mean, almost, what do you say if you swing a dead squirrel, you're gonna hit somebody that has a headache?
Cat without hitting somebody who's got a headache in this town, right?
Right. So, I mean, statistically, the reality is just about every other person has a headache, and so that's often where it starts and then goes down that road of taking pain meds to try to mask it. And then the pain meds tear up the intestine and the liver and it creates knee pain. And they take pain meds for the knee pain. And, on goes the declining cycle of health to potentially devastating or fatal,
Yes.
consequences if we don't make appropriate change. So that's why the book was called The Headache Advantage, because that is God telling us make a change. They think what you're doing is a compromise, something in your life, something in your lifestyle, whether it's a perfume that you're breathing, that you're wearing,
Right.
or that your spouse is using, but it's typically something we're doing ourselves, right?
Yep.
The only person we can change is ourselves. And so that head pain is such a tremendous indicator of what we're doing wrong when we look at it from the location of the pain. And so that's where the book had to be written. I mean, there's there's no everything else. I hate to say it, but everything else about headaches is misinformation. It's
Hmm.
most of it is going to be see a pain management doctor to get stronger pain medications, or to mask it in some way, when it's your body, it's your head literally yelling at you that stop eating the glyphosate, or take a B vitamin, a thiamine supplement to help the stomach function better.
Hmm.
So let's use take advantage of what the head is trying to tell us, and look at how we can learn from it. And so in the left sided headache chapter, I start with questionnaire of all the other symptoms potentially related to the stomach, for a couple of reasons. We start there. One, because the more of these you have, the more confirming it is, the more it's going to build your confidence in why you need to make this change as a headache sufferer in this case. But then it also helps lay out, the potential advancing complications, or the cost of inactivity. I think the other term you were looking for was the cost of inactivity,
Right. There it is.
right? So if we don't recognize, hey, my stomach, the left-sided head pain, the pain between my shoulders, the ankle pain, these are signs that my stomach's not functioning. If we
Hmm.
keep masking it and take omeprazole, take a drug, or an antacid to block that acid, that opens the door to bigger problems down the road. So, literally, if we tried to mask it, or found that, taking an acid helped, we're going to block stomach acid, and that opens the door for autoimmune conditions, which is a lifetime of podcasts, of all the, potential autoimmune conditions that could manifest from not having proper stomach acid, which means we're not breaking the proteins down that triggers the immune system. Then those large proteins get into the bloodstream, and then attack joints. So, I mean, that's one of the grave consequences of inactivity in this. And it was simply, hey, I had a left side headache. He masked it, didn't do anything about it, masked the pain with a pain med, or take an antacid to mask the heartburn that was going along with it. So some of the other potential symptoms that could give us some signs, the wrist extensors tend to get weak when the stomach can get weak when the stomach is not functioning properly. Another potential trigger there is sugar. So I mean, if you have both, I mean, sugar is one of the first things we talk about in the book. It's going to exaggerate whatever type of headache you have. So we want to be careful there. We've got left jaw pain, basically anything on the left side of the head. I always start including, as crazy as it is,
Hold on a second. Can
including
I just
brain
pause
tumors.
right there and just
Yep.
repeat a couple of things? First of all, this information has to be repeated again and again and again. Even
Sure.
somebody as focused on health as myself, if I had a headache a while back and my immediate was like, man, that's annoying, right? You just want it to go away. But
Yeah.
I had to catch myself and go, wait a minute, it's on my right side. What happened? What did I eat yesterday? These are the questions. And you just said eating sugar, right? It could be one of the main things that's driving a left-sided headache. So hold
Yeah.
on, anybody out there listening will probably eat sugar from the time of hearing this
Right.
sometime in the
Right.
future, and you may very likely get a left-sided headache. So what we're saying is like, oh no, your life isn't over. It's not like you can't eating sugar, but we're going to hopefully give you more information on top that helps you understand why you specifically, when you eat sugar, get that left-sided headache, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
our goal is to empower people, right?
Right. Exactly.
So just like you said, and the beautiful thing is, yes, we want immediate relief, but when we understand that, we can get immediate relief. And that's what gives me 100% confidence in this stuff. Is if you came into the office with that left side headache, it would be gone before you leave. It's virtually guaranteed. So, I
Let's say
mean,
that again, everybody, because I've told so many people that, and I've had many people experience that in my own clinic. They can't believe it.
right.
And it's so unbelievable to them that I usually give them something at the beginning of the visit. And by the end of the visit, I go, hey, by the way, how's that headache? Right. And they go, oh,
Oh
it's
yeah.
gone. Right. Don't even realize the pain's gone because they're just so relieved. And so
Yeah.
you almost got to remind them, look, hey, and look what we just did. Do that
hmm
next time
hmm
instead, right? Because there are dangers to taking these pain meds. Right. Go on. I'm
Right.
sorry. I
I
keep
don't know.
interrupting.
This is great stuff, and I mean, repetition is the mother of skill. We need to hear this. If we can repeat these things 3 times during the podcast, hopefully that'll resonate. And, people will get it, right?
Exactly.
But we talked about pain in the joint, in the jaw again, because what happens? The way I arrived at this is the stomach meridian starts right underneath the eye and kind of does this whole dance around the left side of the head. Well, both sides, but the stomach is a left-sided organ, so that's where where it's going
I
to
have a
manifest on the
dancing
left.
meridian in my head. Is that what
That's
you're telling
right.
me? I
Feels
knew
like
there
it,
was something off with me.
It's what do you call that? Clotting. What do you call that? Dancing when they're making the
Clogging,
what,
right? Or
clogging,
tapping.
something like that. Yeah, it feels like that, right?
Yeah.
Tap, tap dancing on your head. So the one of the spinal vertebra one is the C1 is going to go forward when there's low acid, setting up allergies and so on. The first vertebra in the neck.
So a chiropractor would see that, right? And they would say,
Yes.
well, if I just adjust the C1 back, then the
Yep.
allergies and everything should get better, right?
For a
Right.
minute.
And that's a part of it, right? But that is a part
Right.
of it. Okay, go
Yes,
on.
100, right, right. No,
Yeah,
the same thing though. T5, the
right.
vertebra between the shoulder blades, the fifth thoracic, which is right between the shoulder blades, that's going to go out when the stomach itself is compromised. That's
Mhm.
pretty specific to the stomach alone. So they may have that, nag between the shoulder blades goes along with the left side headache. These are all like, oops, get the tension behind the shoulders, and then oh, now I got a headache. I didn't take care of it. That's how these things are going to manifest in a person's life. So, I
So if
mean, the
you're a
list is.
person out there who goes to the chiropractor and they constantly have to put your C1 or T5 back in place, this is important for you, right? You can now
Right.
start to learn the things that are driving that aren't just a structural thing or a stressful thing. It could be your stomach acid piece that is contributing to that. And if you get that corrected, you don't have to go to the chiropractor 3 times a week anymore, right?
Right.
Not that I don't want people to go to the chiropractor regularly, but I want
Right.
to also know that you're not solving the full problem. You're getting a little relief, right? Which is better than taking the anti inflammatories. But in the chiropractors out there listening too, right? You would say, hey, if I adjust this person's C1, T5 over and over again, maybe I should look at what they're eating and make sure I'm supporting their digestion better.
Right. 100%. And so, if you are that person that's going to the chiropractor often, help the chiropractor learn too. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, yeah,
Bring
that's
the book.
right. Yeah, let's do it. Again, we're trying to empower the world to
Right.
to learn from what this is. I mean, the typical model that people are exposed to is masking symptoms, not fixing the problem.
Right.
So
Right.
learn pain is intended to elicit change, and head pain is a great reason. I mean, that's why I started with the book about headaches because that typically tells me what the priority is. Somebody might have, I was 15 symptoms, and if the location of the head pain tells me what the root cause is of all 15 of those areas. So, every area has its own, associated gland or organ. Everybody knows that, if you got tension in the left shoulder and down into the arm. Oh, my heart's giving me problems. Every single gland and organ in the body has referred pain patterns like that. So we need to learn from those so that we can make appropriate changes. So, some of the potential triggers to consider if you've got a left-sided headache, you've got pain between the shoulders, you got joint aches, autoimmune conditions, allergies. These are all potential signs of low burping, heartburn. There's a couple mechanisms. Heartburn's more typically going to be related to gallbladder. So see the right-sided headache stuff we talked about. But, low stomach acid can fit in there. So ultimately, left side headache is low stomach acid. And I clarify that because the frontal headache we'll talk about on another visit, another podcast, is more of an ulcer type of a mechanism. So we'll talk about that one.
Just to make the connection there and not to get too complicated, but for the practitioners out there, low stomach acid can contribute to a right-sided headache too, because you need the stomach acid to trigger the release of the bile. So the gallbladder won't, get nudged, it won't get the kick in the butt to do what it's supposed to do without stomach acid. So it could be secondarily, right, because of the low stomach acid.
Yeah, so the questioning, if you and I would muscle test it to figure out what the priority is and that sort of stuff. But the questioning is which came first, chicken or the egg, right? Did you have a left side headache or a right side headache first? Or what happens more commonly? Do you more typically get a right side headache? Okay, we're going to look at gallbladder as a priority. More commonly, left side headache, we're going to look at stomach as a priority to see which one's teeing off the other, clinically, right?
Right.
From a causative perspective.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You got something you want?
No, I think this is, again, it bears repeating because I've taught probably 50 times across the country a seminar that starts with make sure you're digesting things first before you go after everything else, right? And this gives us that clue because there are multiple things that contribute to the low stomach acid, things like not chewing your food, eating in a hurry, drinking too much water, many things, but one that you really pointed out to me that I needed to add to my list that I learned is this vitamin B1 component,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So you mentioned that earlier, like it could just be a vitamin
Yeah.
B1 deficiency. So
Right.
dig into that a little bit for us. Why
So,
are some people vitamin B1 deficient? Or
right. So the thing, some of the key nutrients we need to make stomach acid, calcium, we need to make stomach acid, but we need stomach acid to liberate the calcium, and then the calcium buffers the stomach. So
Mhm.
think Tums, right? That's a really lousy form of calcium, but that's that mechanism is buffering the stomach there. We need zinc to help make stomach acid. So that's the other, most people are zinc deficiency got a lot of press through COVID and that sort of stuff because viruses leach zinc. So that could be part of the mechanism,
Yep.
right? Um, Stress inhibits stomach acid, right? So when we're running from the tiger, when we're stressed out, the vagus nerve is suppressed, right? We're not making stomach acid. We're not going to digest that food. That's the ulcer sort of mechanism. That can be there. We need water, the H2O, the hydrogen, to make the hydrochloric acid. So
Mhm.
if we're dehydrated, that's another mechanism. And then a really common one, I mean, that comes out in the book because B1 thiamine helps break down estrogen so that when we're low in B1 we can have the bitemporal headache. We're low in B we need B1 to make stomach acid so we can have the left-sided headache. Again, regulates hormones, so it could potentially have a cyclops headache, but it also helps the thyroid in production of its hormones, so that could be the tension headache.
So it
So
sounds like B1 should
B1,
be on the top of the list of things
it
to rule,
is
right? If you
right,
got a headache.
right.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
people
it's
aren't
such an
eating,
easy place.
right?
Yeah,
It's not in their diet a lot, right? So they're just not getting it.
right.
From, you need really good organ meats, and what are some other good sources of B1? I mean, just a
Well, a bad source is enriched breads,
bad
right?
source, right? Yeah, right.
Right. They process it out of grains and then realize, oops, people get sick if these vitamins aren't in there. So they spray these synthetic forms of the vitamins back into, enriched bread, and it's garbage, right?
Yeah,
So that's potentially one of the triggers that's going to symptomatically create B1 deficiency,
yeah.
right? So sources, I mean,
It's
you and
gonna be Whole
I,
Foods. Let's just say it,
it's
right?
going to
It's
be,
gonna
yeah,
be Whole
whole
Foods. Your
foods,
vitamin B1 in there, whether it's nuts or beans or seeds or fish or
right?
or chicken, right? All of those, it has to be a whole food that's not
Right.
costing you some problems as well. And by the way, if you're a practitioner listening, this is where we invite you to leave a comment to tell us what we're forgetting or missing, right? Be part of the conversation because we
Yeah.
have blind spots. We're going to talk about things, so help fill in the gaps for us, guys, so that the listeners
Right.
out there know they're getting the whole enchilada with the B1 in the enchilada, right? We don't
Right.
want to
Right.
don't want an enchilada without B1 in it, is what I'm trying to say here.
100%. So why don't you go ahead and talk about the forms of B1, right?
Well, and
You've
that's
got
just
your,
it. If we're going to take into a truth or trend topic, there's a
mhm,
lot of talk about this fat soluble B1 right now, right? You
right.
get phenphothymines, you got your TTFDs, you've got, and there's a lot of a debate out there. And my first question was, well, if it's not an essential vitamin, if we can't get it from foods, then what the heck is it, right? Why do we have to falsely make something? And so,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the more we tuck into that, and we've talked about this in another episode, it has a lot to do with our microbiome being able to create some of these vitamins for us. And if
Right.
you don't have a complete microbiome, then at some point, that's something we may need to be supplementing for until we can get our microbiome. Because getting your microbiome isn't just a one-day job, right? You don't just take
Right.
one probiotic and you're like, oh, okay, back to 100%. So, yeah, I mean, that's why I think we did this whole talk on this test called the metabolic variability index that says,
Yeah.
look, a third of these problems are due to people not having enough vitamin B1. So it's clearly not in the diet.
Hmm.
And we clearly are missing the pieces in our microbiome. So that is one that you probably want to look for a good source, especially if you're getting headaches, right? To give you that
Yeah.
relief and nourishment until you can go to the next level, which is correcting your microbiome and getting the food sources.
And it's that vicious, proverbial vicious cycle, right? We need stomach acids first line of defense. First thing we got to do is start getting that gut biome proper. And I
Right.
haven't seen it specifically in the literature, but most of the B vitamins are made by gut biome, gut bacteria, right? I know for sure B12 that is in the literature, and B6, even folate, I believe is going to be made. So these B vitamins, B1, I'm pretty confident is also made by these gut biome. So we
Right.
need the B1 to make stomach acid to get the gut biome started, get the gut biome healthy, to then have the pump going to produce the B vitamins that we need, right?
Right.
So again, it comes back to the vegetables, the fiber to feed the gut bacteria so that it can then do its job. That gut bacteria is an organ unto itself now, right? I mean, they used to call it the second brain. It's almost pretty soon it's beginning to be called the first brain as knowledge continues to grow in that field.
Mhm.
So yeah, so having the B1. So I mean, you and I lecture for Standard Process. They've got the whole food source. Cataplex B is a product by name.
Right.
That is that plant source of thiamine. So that is
Or,
a great way to go.
or the B core as well,
Or B
right?
core, right?
For those of you who are familiar, right? Either one of
Right,
those
right.
should be.
Cataplex, B core. I mean, I typically could that has some of the before, and I usually look more towards the heart. If speaking of, that's another mechanism. Thiamine helps the heart contract more efficiently, right? Helps those valves maintain their tone. Mitral valve prolapse is a weakness of the tone of the valves. I know we just struck a chord for you because you're doing heart tests on a lot of your patients. So,
Yeah. Well, that
so
makes sense now. The question I get a lot from people: what's the difference? When do you reach for B versus B core, right? And I
right.
think if it's a headache like that, if you're looking for relief faster, I think what I'm hearing you say is that the Cataplex B might be quicker to deliver results in getting rid of the headache, is what you're saying.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Very good.
Cataplex B, right, right. Whereas the B core is going to help the heart contract more efficiently, help with muscle function and that sort of stuff. So that's kind of the difference in when I would grab one over the other. Certainly, I would muscle test and compare.
Yeah.
But for the mechanism we're talking about with the left-sided headache, then Cataplex B typically is where I would be looking.
So let's break it down for anybody who's listening out there who gets a lot of left-sided headaches. First of all, yes, you may want to get some vitamin B, right? And Cataplex B may
Mhm.
be your number one choice for a while, right? To figure out,
Right.
until you get yourself to the next level.
Hmm.
You have to determine what is it that's suppressing your stomach acid. Are you taking an antacid? Number one, right? That's probably one of the
Right.
things that's suppressing your stomach acid,
Right.
because these medications, just to remind everybody, they're not meant to be taken for more than 2 weeks, right? 2 to 4 weeks, I think, maximum. If you read the insert on that, it says you're supposed to take months off. So if you're somebody out there who's listening to this or know somebody who does that and they're getting headaches, first of all, tell them about vitamin B, but also have them talk to somebody who knows a little something about stomach acid, because that's going to talk about consequences down the road, right? That's
Yeah, yeah. Osteoporosis. We forgot to include that, right? I mentioned that we need the stomach acid to activate calcium. So if we have low, I mean, that's one of the most talked about consequences of blocking stomach acid with a PPI and a omeprazole, a Tums, or that sort of stuff, is loss of bone density over time, right?
yeah.
Because we need the stomach acid to activate the minerals and especially calcium, and that's what bones are minerals, right? That is our
Right.
foundation, our keeps us upright and
Yeah.
tall and strong and all.
Right.
So yeah, protect those bones for sure.
And then, and people may, when just definitely look at what you're eating for one, right? If you're
Mhm.
eating things like sugar, right, that might be depleting your vitamin B1, right? So
Right.
that could be the reason that sugar, you were on the precipice and you just didn't have enough B1 to around for all your needs. And then you ate some sugar and you wiped out your reserves, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that. And know that that means that you're probably needing a lot more vitamin D for a little while, right? As opposed to just maybe one. You may need to take
Hmm.
5 a day for a few days to get yourself back into the green, back into the, where your
Yeah.
body can do everything it needs to do.
Right.
Um, Other things that, people are eating in a hurry. Let's not forget that, right? And so
Hmm.
if you're throwing food into your stomach and there's no stomach acid there, that's probably going to create some problems for you, right?
Right, right.
Won't be
Pray
able to.
before you eat, right? I mean, prayer is that parasympathetic gets that vagus nerve going, which is calmness, stimulates digestion, stimulates recovery. So we should be in that kind of a rested, chill state, which I'm in Southern Cal. I'm an overdriven yo-yo myself, guilty as charged.
Driven yo-yo. That's a title of the book right there.
So, I mean, I need to remind myself, it's time to
Sure.
eat, it's time to digest. Take a break for a second.
Same, yes, constantly
Mm,
putting those things into my own life every day to remind myself I'm not Superman. after all.
Right.
As much as I'd
I
like to
want to
think.
be.
Exactly. Yeah, that'd be nice. I want to be able to run a half marathon at a 5 minute mile pace. Yeah,
Right.
of course.
Right.
So, part of what I learned from you too is looking at the left side of the head makes you look at the left-sided organs, right? That's a Chinese
Mhm.
principle in Chinese medicine.
Yeah.
So, could there be some level of pancreatic insufficiency that's involved in this? Because that the vitamin Bs are definitely the preferred vitamin for the pancreas. So, can you talk a little bit about that? Because that
For
be
sure.
yeah,
Yes. And so, yes, they work together, right? And they're left side organs. The pancreas is digestive enzymes to further help us digest. The stomach is the stomach acid. Certainly, a lot of the products we use, Zypan, for example, has both in it. Zypan is another product that could be a very immediate solution for a left-sided headache. So, your stomach acid type products, with or without enzymes, depending on the need. And yes, in acupuncture, the pancreas and the spleen are both on the same, all three of those are on the kind of the same organ or same meridian system. And so then typically when those show up together, I'm looking at the emotional triggers. So the emotions associated with the stomach, pancreas, and spleen are oversympathetic, low self-esteem, disgust, expanded
mm,
importance of self. So
mm,
when we've got, an overbearing, it could have been that this all took place when they had a big check to their self-esteem, and so we may need to get those emotions in check, get those physically handled, if you will.
right.
Um, Again, we've talked about it in probably just about every podcast, but the way to prevent the storage of those emotions is to have a good mineral status.
Mm,
When we're more rock-like, when minerals are like rocks, they allow us to bounce off the emotions and not take them on physically. When we're eating the sugars and the trans fats and not exercising, we're more prone to physically store those emotions, and that's going to compromise and make us more prone to store the emotions. And then we get into that chronic illness problem where we've got the oversympathetic, now we've got the low stomach acid, so then we've got the osteoporosis to go with it, and down goes that vicious cycle of deterioration to
yeah.
where people just feel like they're old. And we had Bible study last night, and this guy kept talking about, well, doesn't your knees hurt when you ride, or these aches and pains? I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're only 30 years old, so give it some time. So that's
Right.
what they'll always say, right? Oh, it's just
Yep,
because
yep.
you're young. Well, no, I'm a little older than that. Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Well, it's funny you're saying that about the mineral, and I think it's important to remind people that there are preferred minerals for your organs like the pancreas, right? And one of those is
Mhm,
chromium.
mhm. Right.
Again, the answer is eating whole foods, whole meats,
Mhm,
whole,
mhm.
nuts and seeds, because if you can just build that into your daily habit, to
Mhm.
get something that's a raw organic sprouted walnut or something every day, at least you're giving your body something in that whole food form to make
Yeah.
sure that you're getting those minerals. Now, I'm not saying you're fully satisfying it, but we need to find ways to make sure we're getting those minerals, like you said. Otherwise, there
Yeah.
will be an emotional component that will also come up that
Yeah.
makes it more complicated for us all.
hmm
Right.
And the emotions cause the organs to underfunction. So,
Right.
that it just that again, it perpetuates the cycle to that downward spiral
Yeah.
where we're reaching for greatness, right? That's the opposite of the downward spiral.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah. Mhm.
But if you didn't listen to last week's episode where we had Dr. Rebecca talk about this, right? You said
Mhm.
one of the most profound things I think worth repeating, that making sure that these emotions are cleared off, right? That are
Mhm.
wearing you down reduces your pill count, right? It reduces the amount of supplements you actually have to wind up taking. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's a piece that I think is worth important. Is there a headache specific that you find is most driven by emotions, right? That you would see, just to go a little off
Ooh,
topic here.
um,
Yeah.
no, I mean that
Oh,
every
okay.
organ, every organ has its own emotions. So,
Good to know.
it goes back to, I mean, I'm looking for emotional triggers on everything, every weakness I find. So
Mhm.
there's pretty much always an emotional trigger. Probably the best answer to that is the longer the problem's been there, the more the emotions are going to be heaped on top of it.
Mm.
When they've had, left-sided headaches for 20 years, they've got 20 years of baggage that has accumulated over time. And that's what makes it a little more challenging, a little more, that's why chronic illness takes more effort on both our, the practitioner and the sufferer's part to
Right.
get it all handled. Right.
Yeah, and one little B1 supplement might not be enough for something.
Right. Yeah.
That
Right.
really,
It'll start the wheel turning, to start the solution going in the right direction. So, Lord willing, they're not storing all those emotions from there on. But yeah,
right,
we've got to heal the baggage too,
right,
for
yeah. So
sure.
that's another good question to ask yourself is how long have I been getting these headaches, right? Because that kind of
Yeah.
gives you a realistic expectation as to how long it will take for you to get to a point where you don't get them anymore,
Yeah.
right?
In homeopathy, it's considered a month per year that the condition's been there
Interesting.
for
Okay.
taking the
So if you've
homeopathic
had
or
it for 20 years, it may take you 20 months to be
right.
whole again. I mean, unless you
Yeah.
got somebody like Dr. V getting rid of all of your bad emotions and subluxations all at the same time, right?
Right.
You can accelerate that with the right support, right? I would say.
Yes.
But
100%. Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I mean, I never want a headache to leave the office, and that is my expectation, my goal.
Yeah.
Just like you said, the other day I had a new patient. I went through the whole thing, and she had a myriad of stuff, and we're, you know, feeling like a superhero, rocking her world. Forgot to ask till she was just about to leave. I'm like, oh yeah, how's your head? Oh, she's like, oh yeah, it's gone.
Put a sign out front, right? If we can't solve your headaches, you get a free donut. And yeah.
Right.
Okay, well, so we talked about have we talked enough about the left-sided headaches? I hope everybody got some information out there. I think the biggest takeaway that I would suggest from a practical standpoint is, if you are getting left-sided headaches, put a Cataplex B bottle from Standard Process right next to whatever you'd reach for, whether it's a Tylenol, and chew up, a handful of those before you take that and see if it goes away. And every time you do that, keep doing that. And then maybe eventually you won't have to keep reaching for it, right? Then that's the start of
And
it.
the beauty is, if it's going to work, it will work within minutes. You chew those, they don't taste good. Truth be told.
I told you could just swallow them. You don't have to,
Yeah,
but it'll work
but I mean,
faster.
literally, yeah. Chewing. I mean, the gustatory nerves, the nerves on the tongue, tell the
Mm.
brain, hey, the B1's coming, so you get a much more immediate response. So yeah, if you don't have a Dustin or Dr. V helping you figure this out, you chew a couple up, you're gonna know within 10 minutes whether it's a solution or not, because that headache will, if it doesn't go down significantly, it'll go away
10
immediately.
minutes. That's
Yeah.
so cool. So that's what I want to challenge everybody out there to do, right? Just get a small
Hmm.
bottle of that. And every time you get a headache, because there's so many we just talked about, especially left-sided
Hmm.
though, chew those
Hmm.
up. Give yourself 10 minutes. See what happens. Right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
great. That is a great pearl right there for everybody.
yeah.
We should have that ready to go. I
And
mean, I
before
often
we,
keep that in my office for that particular reason. Right.
right.
Exactly.
And worst case scenario, you get a little extra energy, huh?
There you go. Right. Yeah.
Bummer.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk that cycle.
One other mechanism before we wrap it up. One other mechanism we didn't talk about is perfumes. They
Oh,
can sometimes affect the stomach. So
hey.
I mean,
Yeah.
just to kind of pull another mechanism in so that people have more answers, more potential solutions. Perfume. One of the first times I did this gal had 20 years of left-sided headaches.
Mm,
And as I dug in, it turned out to be her perfume that she wore every single day for the last 20 years. Very
mm,
diligent,
yeah.
and figured it out. And she never, and at the time I wrote the book, it had been, I think, 7 years since she'd had a headache simply by cutting her perfume out. And
Wow.
so the other area that perfume, you talked about this, the pancreas also being related to the stomach. When I first started testing perfumes, I'm like, oh, it's going to affect hormones because that's what they're after, right? But the reality is perfumes often will affect pancreas because they're trying to create that insulin type dump, right? Because that's what causes cravings. So you want to smell your wife and go, ooh, gotta have you, right? That's lovely perfume.
Is that how
So,
that goes? All right.
so it tends to stimulate actually an insulin dump. It can inhibit stomach acid. It can, some of them can, cause an insulin dump, which causes carb sugar cravings. So if you're, struggling, with yeast and craving sugars, see if you have less when you don't wear your perfume. And
Yes.
find a perfume or an essential oil or something that does not do that to you. Otherwise, you got that whole insulin yo-yo going on where 40% of your meal is going to be stored as fat when that with that insulin dump, you're going to be struggling with willpower or discipline because you can have cravings all the time. So those are potential signs of a perfume or cologne kind of fragrant body wash or deodorant hair care product that is tripping up your system, your stomach, your pancreas.
And that's just it. Sometimes, you just run into somebody and you feel this, like, whoa, something,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I like that. And unfortunately, that sweet person is trying to be
Sweet
sweeter.
person.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But yeah. Now, would you say that that means that you're low on vitamin B if you're having that sensitivity to
It could be chemical sensitivity traditionally is a P4 low P450 low phase one detoxification issue from a
Okay.
true chemical sensitivity perspective. In other words, is it allergies or is it chemical sensitivity? So that you sneeze when you're around somebody with perfumes or around chemicals, cleaning chemicals. That's a low P450. That's zinc. Not cadmium makes it worse. Zinc, copper, manganese are the minerals to help P450 run. Yeah, some of the B vitamins, antioxidants are huge there. That's
Okay.
your broccoli sprouts, things like that are great balancer of that P450, which is catalase, superoxide dismutase, those free radical scavengers. Those are the main nutrients to drive that phase one detoxification, which oxidizes products or makes products water soluble to then go through phase two of detoxification. So when that's not working properly, we're going to be more chemically sensitive when we breathe perfumes, colognes, cleaning supplies, things like that. Mhm.
Okay. So what I'm just to translate that to the masses
Yeah,
out.
sorry.
No, no. And if you're sneezing when you run into somebody with perfume, or if you feel that rejection, like you just want to stay away from it, yes, it is unnatural. So that's probably a good thing.
Mhm.
But you're likely not detoxing as well as you should be, right? If you're having
True.
that much of a response from it. And so, don't do a juice cleanse, is what I'm saying, but make sure that
Mhm.
you're supporting your detoxification pathways, I think you're saying, with things like
Mhm.
manganese, all these minerals and vitamins, and figure out
Mhm.
ways to support those pathways a little bit better, right?
Yeah,
Find somebody like
yes.
Dr. V to help you know specifically what that is. That could be
Yeah,
helpful.
there's plenty of good practitioners in the world, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Well, buy the book. We'll go
There you go. Or grab the book.
there.
That'll
Buy
give
the
you.
book. It's got has lots of answers in there
Well,
for you and your loved ones.
there it is. Yes. So this is it again. This is Dr. B's book, The Headache Advantage. And like he said, he's got links down here to give you some shortcuts, but lots of great information. If you can go to theheadacheadvantage.com, get more information. You got him giving you the peace sign here in a
Dr.
video.
V,
Or
that's Dr.
after.
V.
Oh, Dr. V. Okay. There you go. Excellent. Now, I mean, we only have a few minutes left. Should we dive into the Cyclops headache before we're done, or should we save that for another day?
I think we'll cover it on another day because we can have
Yeah,
just as much fun with that,
right,
and that way
exactly.
this is succinct for somebody that's got left side headaches. They can use this to their advantage.
There you go. Well, we'll give you a teaser, right?
Right,
Cyclops probably has to do with your pituitary, right? So
right, right.
hopefully we can give you some real solutions and understanding as to why the pituitary would need support. I think
Mm,
it's one thing that's way overlooked, especially in a world where we're giving people exogenous hormones.
mhm,
People
mhm,
taking birth control or low T or whatever, anything to do with
mhm.
that. There may be a piece to that as well. So we'll get to that one in 2 weeks when we talk about the Cyclops headache, right?
Yeah, sounds good. So take advantage of what your body's trying to tell you with these headaches. Any head pain, any pain in your body is your body trying to get your attention. Learn from what it is. Every location has an associated gland or organ. Head pain, again, the reason it's an advantage is it usually tells what the priority is, where you really want to start making changes in your health. So
Yeah.
if you have a left-sided headache, you probably have pain between the shoulders, ankle pain, joint pain. uh, you're dancing with osteoporosis, with allergies, with autoimmune conditions, because these are all signs that you have low stomach acid. So if you have any of this, get after. Do you need a B1? Do you need a good source of calcium? Do you need to get the oversympathetic, the low self-esteem,
Right.
emotions handled, managed, right? Build some confidence into your world.
Right.
Yeah, spread love and you receive love. So,
Exactly.
so learn from what your body's trying to tell you. Start paying attention. It could be as simple as chewing up a couple of, Cataplex B, get some immediate relief.
Mm.
That will tell you whether or not that is a solution, a viable, simple, easy, affordable solution for you. So,
Well, and
so
I know
that's
we've
where we
got a
go
lot
with
of
this.
brilliant healthcare practitioners out there who do listen and tune in, and they can.
Right.
They gave us so whatever. If you something in there that you want to make sure you leave in the comments, say, hey, don't forget about this. If you have left-sided headache, this is something. And If you've had something that you found is a remedy that you found that works every time, share that with us. And then we'll dissect it and try to figure out exactly what that is, right? And why it's working.
Remedy or a food trigger,
Right,
or a
right.
food trigger for the left side headache.
Triggers. And for those of you who are chiropractors listening, if you say, yeah, I keep doing this adjustment or that adjustment, right? If you have some other information to share with us, let's make this a community effort here to make sure everybody gets
Right.
the relief that they deserve to live the
If
life.
you as a practitioner share on there, you could be a doctor that's right around the corner from somebody that's looking for answers. So
Exactly. Probably. In fact, I
Right.
know there's somebody, right? If we swing that squirrel, like you say, there's somebody
Swing a
around
dead
your office
cat.
who's got a headache right now to know about this.
Yes.
But
Yes,
anyway, we really
indeed.
appreciate all of the feedback and the comments, and we appreciate the conversation. And so, yeah, keep sharing this with those people who need to hear this, because, like I said, it needs to be repeated. This is something that we've been conditioned, or so many people have been conditioned to think, well, I just take an Advil, I just take a Tylenol, and you're being told that by many people. And I understand that, but make sure you're taking the lesson away from that and reaching for the nutrition and seeing if that works. Give yourself 10 minutes. It's worth it, right? Because of those problems coming down the road aren't going to go away with an over-the-counter pain med, right? That's the problem. You're gonna hit a point where there's no return almost. I mean, there's no point in I think we can always return at some level, unless your head gets, something. Anyway,
Yeah.
your last thoughts, Dr. V, to inspire the masses to get rid of their headaches in the way that we know that is the best way we can do for them.
Right. If you're listening to this, you likely have left-sided headaches.
Yeah.
So now you've got a checklist to areas to look. It is solvable. It is always solvable. Whether we have the answer, stay persistent, stay diligent. The answer is out there. That's a line from a movie. What is that? Star Trek or something? The answer is out there.
I think Dr. V just said it, and he said it really
All
well.
right.
It's true. And I think that's just it. Just because somebody hasn't given you the answer doesn't mean that there isn't an answer. And
Right.
there's limits to everybody's knowledge. That doesn't mean
Mhm.
that there are limits to what your body can do to heal itself. There's always a reason, and we're
Mhm.
going to do our best to help you figure out what that is. And so far, we're doing all right with it. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks for
Get
listening,
well.
and we look
All
forward
right.
to hearing your comments and your feedback. Have a good one.
Mhm.